We are 4 days from a partial government shutdown over Democrat demands on DHS and ICE. There's a new battle over voter ID, and Kamala is back, baby. All of that and so much more today on 10 Minute Drill.
Everybody get up, get up.
The story of America is the story of an adventure.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
We are a nation under God, and I believe God intended for us to be free.
Happy Tuesday. Hopefully you are all coming down from your Super Bowl hangovers. And they might not have been super potent hangovers because it was a fairly boring game, but the most important part, of course, was the food. In the Whitlock house, we smoked pork belly burnt ends and buried them in Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce, brown sugar, and honey. They were amazing. The game was not. And also, shout out to Utah-trained, Wyoming-born Breezy Johnson, the first U.S. medalist over at the Olympic Games in Italy for her performance in the downhill. But our first story today, on Friday, funding for the Department of Homeland Security will run out. As we have talked about, Republicans and Democrats right now are trying to find a path forward to fund DHS and put new conditions on ICE on the way that they carry out enforcement around the country. Democrats released a list of demands last week, including things like targeted enforcement. DHS officers cannot enter private property without a judicial warrant. No masks, requiring DHS officers to display IDs on their person, protecting sensitive locations, stopping racial profiling, upholding use of force standards, body cameras for accountability, and no paramilitary police. Some of these are obvious deal breakers. The reason that ICE agents wear masks and don't display their IDs is because with the support of elected Democrats, these agents have been doxxed, threatened, and even shot at and violently attacked a number of times. Also, the use of judicial warrants is going to be a deal breaker because if you have to go involve the judiciary in this process, when administrative warrants have always been the practice and courts have upheld that, you're never going to be able to deport any kind of violent criminal illegal immigrant again. Democrats know that. Their goal here is simply to make their base believe they're doing something about ICE. But the challenge in this fight was outlined in a conversation between Hakeem Jeffries and Dana Bash from CNN on Sunday.
And it's clear in your proposals, this is about reining in ICE and the CBP. But those agencies, as you well know, are very well funded already through the Big Beautiful Bill Act. That's what the president called it, and it passed last year. So what that means is that a shutdown would really only impact unrelated agencies, FEMA, TSA, FAA. So how does pushing for these changes and potentially not getting there help rein in an immigration crackdown?
Well, our plan is to get there on behalf of the American people.
Our plan is to get there on behalf of the American people, which means absolutely nothing. We've talked about the fact that ICE is funded until 2029. They are not struggling for money. The DHS shutdown that Democrats are carrying out right now only hurts FEMA and TSA. And Democrats know this, and the media has kind of let them get away with it until these last couple days with exchanges like that. And so hopefully Republicans will hold strong there and not try and hamstring our immigration enforcement, which was a top priority of voters in the 2024 elections, just so that Democrats have something to tell their angry social media base. There's already some discussion of a short-term funding bill for DHS that would allow them a little bit more time to knock out these details and try and address some of the Democrats' demands. But Hakeem Jeffries has said Friday is the deadline, which is interesting because Hakeem doesn't really have any cards there to play except for we will shut down the government. And owning shutting down the government isn't necessarily the constructive message that you want to be sending out to your troops. Negotiating with Hakeem Jeffries is a little bit like negotiating with Michael Scott.
You have one day.
One day for what?
They always give an ultimatum.
But speaking of that base they're trying to appease here, things in Minneapolis are still very chaotic. In this video, you see a person being attacked by Minnesota Ice Watch, these left-wing lunatics. Now, they're throwing adult toys at the car, even though the person driving the car is also a member of Minnesota Ice Watch, and he's showing them a flag that calls ICE fascists to try and help them understand he's on their team. The problem is his license plate has been logged in the Minneapolis ICE Watch database that we've already pointed out has all sorts of problems here. So the Keystone cops in Minneapolis are still after it, but also at a Core Power yoga studio in Minneapolis, a group of angry wine moms yelled at the instructors and the people at the front desk because the Core Power yoga studio did not want to have an anti-ICE sign in their front window.
The fact that that is being silenced, the fact that you guys are staying silent, that is complicit. That is not okay. People are being murdered and abducted and attacked here.
On Capitol Hill right now, there's a major debate about voter ID as part of the Save America Act, a bill that Republicans are promoting to make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. And this has brought up the age-old plug-and-play Democrat strategy of saying voter ID is voter suppression. Here's Hakeem Jeffries trying to deal with questions on this.
The question is that what Republicans are trying to do is to engage in clear and blatant voter suppression.
Now, the problem for Democrats like Hakeem Jeffries is voter ID is one of the most popular policy proposals in America across the entire political spectrum. 70 to 80% of Democrats support it. Across the racial spectrum, black voters overwhelmingly support voter ID. Hispanic voters overwhelmingly support voter ID. Why? Because it's not very difficult to get an ID. And if you believe voting is important, you should also believe in the importance of securing it with simple checks like voter ID. Adam Schiff similarly got put in an awkward position in an interview about this.
71% of Democrats favor requiring photo ID. Is that something that you can support?
It's part of the broader disenfranchisement effort. And no, I don't think that's the right direction.
Part of a larger disenfranchisement effort is Democrats speak for, we can't actually argue this point, but we need to continue to be against voter ID. Why Democrats have chosen this hill to die on when we know so much of their own base and electorate supports this, I'll never know. But my belief is the left-wing dark money universe will fight everything they can to make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. And we can only guess why. Over in Iran, we're continuing to monitor the situation of U.S. personnel and assets being moved all around Iran to continue to create pressure on the Ayatollah and the Iranian regime as President Trump has been having on-again, off-again talks with the leadership, first about the nuclear program, but also the outstanding issue of protesters. There were talks held in Oman on Friday with the promise of more talks to come this week. However, patience seems to be running thin, both for President Trump and for most of the rest of the world, as we continue to hear brutal, terrible reports about how the regime has treated protesters. And you'll remember that President Trump early on encouraged protesters to go out and keep protesting because help was on the way. And as he's negotiated with the regime about the nuclear program, people have worried that he might be leaving those protesters out to dry. But I believe as we continue to watch this week, there are a lot of signals that more action could be coming. And again, we will monitor that situation closely. One of the more interesting spending debates that Washington has had over these last couple of years is about healthcare and the fact that, for example, when Republicans passed the Big Beautiful Bill, one of their priorities in healthcare was cutting waste, fraud, and abuse to make the programs work better for people who actually need them. Well, a group called Save Our States has a new campaign highlighting a major source of healthcare waste in America.
It's another bejeweled, bedazzling lifestyles of the rich and famous. The University of Miami Hospital. The height of elegance, a huge new luxury lobby, a grand piano, chandelier, even abstract art. And they're not just in Miami. They're off with the glitterati in Abu Dhabi. And due to their tax-exempt status, it's subsidized by you, the taxpayer.
Now, Save Our States followed this ad with a letter to Governor DeSantis and a bunch of Florida officials calling on them to look into this massive waste and abuse of the system. These tax-exempt hospitals get that tax-exempt nonprofit status on the commitment that they're going to do some good with it, provide charitable care, things like that. Instead, hospitals like University of Miami are funding these lavish lobbies, paying executives millions of dollars, building a facility in Abu Dhabi, even paying the University of Miami football coach with money that was intended for a hospital and for healthcare. So you can look at that and see if you feel like that is a worthwhile use of healthcare dollars, while Democrats are saying every cut to waste, fraud, and abuse in this country is killing people and leaving them without any kind of access to care. There's clearly a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse in the system to target. Anytime there's a major weather event, you can expect people to very quickly find a way to attribute it to their own political agenda around things like climate change. For example, in the last couple weeks, what's up with this big freeze? Some scientists see climate change link. That's from the New York Times this year. However, during an unseasonably warm winter just a couple years ago, they also wrote this. Weirdly warm winter has climate fingerprints all over it, study says. The fun thing about a policy tool like climate change is Democrats can use it to be whatever they want it to be. Is it warm? Climate change. Is it cold? Climate change did that. Well, there was an event in Texas last week that went actually surprisingly viral for a debate over climate change.
The climate crisis was exaggerated, with the consequence that society ran down a rabbit hole of rapid decarbonization.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's bullshit.
So that first voice was Hoover Institute, Stanford, Professor Stephen Koonin, a world-renowned scientist who also served in the Obama administration, pointing out the fact that the climate alarmism movement went too far in driving people crazy and trying to create this massive, rapid decarbonization effort that left a lot of states in the United States and a lot of countries around the world without the energy they need. And the response you hear, the profane response, actually came from Texas A&M professor Andrew Dessler, again highlighting the fact that the climate alarmism movement, when backed up against the wall, is just going to start cursing and being angry because they know they've been caught with their hand in the cookie jar. But in another part of this same event, he acknowledged this.
We have no idea how bad climate change is going to be. Absolutely not.
We have no idea how bad climate change is going to be is quite an admission from the people who are saying everyone needs to shift the entire economy, give up their cars, give up everything in their life to address climate change if they don't really know how bad it's going to be. For our You Can't Make It Up segment, Kamala is back again.
I have good news. So Kamala HQ is turning into headquarters, and it's where you can go online to get basically the latest of what's going on, and also to meet and revisit with some of our great, courageous leaders.
Now right there, she's exclusively talking about social media platforms. If you thought headquarters meant a campaign announcement or something like that, it's simply she's using the previous campaign account to turn it into a more interesting, free-flowing space for content that won't look a lot different than what she was doing before. This announcement was more just about trying to insert herself back into the conversation, particularly as she has seen rival Gavin Newsom get so much attention. But the challenge for both of them is neither of them are talking about ideas on things people care about, like immigration, affordability, how to fix challenges they see in the country. Neither of them are talking about records because both of them have records that are political poison. And so they're trying to create the hottest social media hub for the young people and the youths to go to. But no one's going to stick around there for very long because there's no substance. It's sort of like showing up at a buffet after it's already been cleaned up. There's nothing there. There's nothing for you to eat. You might find like an old Dannon yogurt, but you're not going to be satisfied. And that's going to be the case for Democrats until one of them can combine this very thirsty pick-me online behavior with some actual substance and records of success. We will monitor that situation as well. That is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us here at 10 Minute Drill. Please like, subscribe, leave a review, tell your friends, and have a great day.